You called yourself lazy again today. You looked at the list of things you needed to do, felt nothing, did nothing, and then spent the rest of the evening hating yourself for it. This is a cycle most people live inside for years. But here's what nobody tells you. What you're calling laziness almost certainly isn't laziness at all. It's something darker, something quieter, and something that actually deserves your compassion, not your contempt. The word lazy carries an enormous amount of shame. It suggests weakness, selfishness, a moral failing you should simply push past with enough discipline. That shame then becomes its own weight. The worse you feel about not doing the thing, the harder it becomes to start. And so the cycle tightens. Avoidance, self-criticism, more avoidance, until doing even the smallest task can feel genuinely impossible. Sound familiar? You are not alone in this, not even slightly. Over the next few minutes, we're going to decode what's actually happening beneath the surface when motivation disappears and the simplest tasks become mountains. We'll look at the real psychological and neurological states that present as laziness, states that are real, measurable, and nothing to do with your character. Understanding this won't fix everything overnight, but it will change how you speak to yourself, and that changes everything. Laziness, in the traditional sense, means choosing not to act when you easily could. It implies capability without motivation, effort without willingness. But the people who call themselves lazy are almost never actually lazy by that definition. They desperately want to do the things. They feel guilty about not doing the things. They lie awake at night thinking about the things. That gap between wanting and doing is not laziness. That gap is information. Let's start with the neuroscience. Motivation isn't a character trait, it's a chemical state. The brain's dopamine system drives your ability to anticipate reward, initiate action, and sustain effort. When this system is depleted or dysregulated through chronic stress, poor sleep, nutritional deficiency, or prolonged emotional strain, the felt sense of motivation simply isn't there. You're not refusing to try. Your brain's engine is running on empty, and discipline alone cannot refuel it. Depression is perhaps the most misunderstood driver of what people call laziness. It doesn't always look like visible sadness. It often looks like flatness, an absence of color in experiences that used to feel meaningful. Getting out of bed, replying to messages, cooking a meal, activities that require almost no effort for others can require everything you have. Calling this laziness is like blaming someone with a broken leg for not running. The problem isn't their will, it's their injury. Burnout is a physiological state, not a mindset problem. When you have given more than your nervous system can replenish, through sustained overwork, people-pleasing, chronic responsibility, or the quiet exhaustion of holding everything together, the body begins to shut non-essential systems down. Creativity goes first. Enthusiasm follows. Then even basic decision-making becomes exhausting. This isn't weakness. This is your body enforcing a rest you refuse to take willingly. It's not a character failure. It's a protest. Anxiety doesn't always look like panic. For many people, it manifests as a kind of internal freezing. A paralysis where the weight of all possible outcomes makes starting anything feel impossible. The procrastination that looks like laziness is often anxiety in disguise. The person isn't avoiding the task because they don't care. They're avoiding it because on some level, starting feels like walking toward a threat. The nervous system has logged that action as dangerous, and it acts accordingly. Chronic stress keeps the body locked in a low-grade survival state. When the nervous system believes it's under ongoing threat, financial pressure, relationship tension, social anxiety, a difficult home environment, it allocates resources to defense rather than creation. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for planning, motivation, and willpower, goes partially offline. The part of you that wants to do things is still there, but the part of your brain that enables action has been quietly commandeered. Dopamine depletion doesn't require a formal diagnosis. It can result from anything that consistently overstimulates the reward system. High stimulation media, constant notification cycles, sugar, comparison, instant gratification. Over time, the brain raises its threshold for feeling reward. The ordinary things that once felt motivating, a morning walk, reading, a creative project, no longer generate enough signal. Everything feels flat. That flatness isn't apathy, it's a recalibration problem your environment has created. Here is the insight that reframes everything. What you're experiencing as laziness is your mind and body sending an emergency signal. Not a signal of weakness, a signal of need. Rest, regulation, safety, connection, meaning. When those fundamental requirements aren't met, the system begins to withdraw. What looks like laziness from the outside and feels like failure from the inside is actually your brain doing exactly what it should, refusing to perform from a state of depletion. That is not a flaw. That is intelligence. The cruelest part of this pattern is what shame does to it. When you feel guilty for not doing things, your stress response activates. Cortisol rises. The already depleted nervous system comes under more pressure. The capacity for motivated action drops further. Shame doesn't motivate, it depletes. Every time you call yourself lazy, you are quite literally making it harder to do the thing you're blaming yourself for not doing. The internal critic is not your coach, it's part of the problem. The comparison culture we live inside makes this significantly worse. We are surrounded by curated performances of productivity. People who appear to always be achieving, always optimized, always on. What we don't see are the crashes, the support structures, the privilege, the editing. Measuring your internal reality against someone else's external performance is not useful data. It is noise. And for someone already running on empty, that noise can be genuinely damaging. The most useful thing you can do when motivation disappears is to get curious rather than critical. Ask yourself, when did this start? What was happening in my life at that point? What am I actually feeling beneath the avoidance, fear, exhaustion, grief, overwhelm? The answer to those questions tells you what you actually need. And when you address the real need, the capacity for action often returns on its own. You weren't lazy. You were depleted. There's a real difference. Rest is not a reward you earn after you've been productive enough. Rest is a biological necessity that enables the very productivity you're trying to force. When the nervous system is regulated and the body feels genuinely safe, motivation re-emerges naturally. It doesn't need to be forced. The people who sustain creativity, output, and energy over the long term are not the ones who push hardest. They are the ones who understand that recovery is part of the work. When you genuinely cannot do anything, start with the smallest possible thing. Not the to-do list, not the project. A glass of water. 5 minutes outside. One reply to one message. The brain doesn't need a dramatic change. It needs a small experience of agency. That one small completed action shifts your neurological state just enough to make the next one possible. You don't need motivation to begin. You begin in order to find motivation. That sequence matters enormously. Reframing rest without guilt requires practice. It means noticing when you dismiss your own need for recovery and choosing differently. It means separating your worth from your output. It means understanding that who you are is not the same as how much you produce on any given day. The culture around us equates rest with laziness. But rest, genuine restorative rest, is an act of self-respect. And it's also, paradoxically, one of the most productive things you can do. If this resonated with you, if you recognize something real in what we've explored today, I go deeper into psychology and human behavior every single week on Mind Decoded. We decode the patterns that run beneath the surface of how we think, feel, and make sense of our lives in a way that's honest and genuinely usable. The link to the blog is in the description below. Subscribing to the channel means you'll never miss an episode like this one. Let's bring it together. What you've been calling laziness is almost certainly something else. Depression, burnout, anxiety, nervous system dysregulation, dopamine depletion, or the quiet exhaustion of carrying too much for too long. These are real states. They are not moral failures. Understanding what's actually happening is the first step toward addressing it with something more useful than shame. You are not lazy. You are human. And that distinction is worth everything. Subscribe to Mind Decoded Every week, we decode human psychology, behaviour, and the hidden patterns most people never notice. If you want to understand yourself and the people around you more clearly, and use that understanding to live with more intention, this channel is for you. Hit subscribe, and I will see you in the next episode.